Welcome. Welcome to South City Church. Is anybody else kind of surprised or shocked that July is already here? Couldn't believe it, you know. It's like, wasn't it just February just the other day, and we're already in July? Like, what happened? Where are we? You know. But I'm excited because I love this time of year. I love this time of year specifically because it's a time of year for barbecues. It's a time of year for picnics on the beach. It's a time of year where you can just lap up the sun, or you could go camping. Just so you know, by the way, the Siebes, that's us, Sieverodges, we were camping this week because it was teacher strike week, and we decided to make the most of this week. And we got away, and it was awesome. And my kids somehow got talked into doing a photo shoot at the campsite. The owners we know very well, and they roped the kids in to take photographs of their hoodies and stuff like that. So, and then they scored hoodies. They were so happy, you know. Now, I want you to think about, just for a few moments, all the things that are going on in your life right now. Think about what they are, right? Think about all those things that you have to do. Think about all the demands, all the commitments, the schedule, the work, the family. Think about all of those things that you've got going on in your life. And this time of year, it can just feel so full. Already we're in July, but it feels so full. I don't know what your diary looks like, but mine is filling up very quickly. And so often, we approach it just to add more. There's just sort of this danger that goes along with this time of year, isn't it? And the danger is we try to add to our lives only by addition, only by adding more and more and more. And in the end, we feel overcommitted, we feel overburdened, and we feel overwhelmed. Or is it just me? Hello? Many of you have been there, or you're living there right now. I've talked to some people whose calendars are already booked up all the way to December. Wow. Life is just like this sort of activity blur. Not something we savor, not something we experience or remember or enjoy. And so we're starting this new season as a church family, not by talking about what we need to start doing, but what we need to stop doing. Did you get that? We're not going to be talking about what we need to start doing. We're talking about what we need to stop doing. Enough. Enough. That's the word I want you to remember for today. Enough. This weekend we're launching this 4-week series called Enough. We're going to look at 4 habits we think are toxic to our lives, that we assume are often just the normal way to go, the normal way to live. But in the end, they keep us from, or they become a barrier to experience life, the life that God has for us, the life that God has called us to live. Years ago, a pastor asked one of his mentors, somebody he looked up to, somebody who spoke into his life, he asked his mentor for advice about how to handle the increasing pressures of life. You know, family, finances, the pressures of ministry and leadership. And the pastor expected to hear a list of things that he needed to start doing, like pray more. You need to pray more, or focus more, or read more books, or study more, or just be more spiritual. Do you ever feel that burden? Especially in a church environment, you know, you just feel, wow, I'm gonna have to feel like I have to do more to be more spiritual. And the pastor was expecting to hear some litany of things he needed to do, but instead there was this long pause. And his mentor, called Dallas Willard, said very plainly, there it is, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Okay, what else? He's thinking, what else you got for me? The pastor asked, you know, what else you've got? And another long pause, and then there was this. Dallas Willard said to him, there is nothing else. We must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. Do you get that, guys? Take that in for a moment. And here's our hypothetical. here's what I want us to think about. What if hurry is actually one of, if not the single greatest barrier to your experience of God and faith in your life right now? I say hypothetical because most of us think hurry is a good thing, or at least it's a neutral thing. It's a way to get more done, to do it more faster, or get from point A to point B a little quicker. But what if, just for the sake of our time together this morning, that frantic pace, that never stopping, that always multitasking, always trying to do more, always trying to do it faster and better, is the main thing that's hurting your life, your relationships, your marriage, your family, your work, your sense of self, your sense of joy, or your sense of peace? I was recently shopping at a large supermarket group down that ways. I won't mention which one. And I was out there shopping, and I was trying to find a parking space before we got into the shops. And I circled around for quite a while. Sometimes the parking lot can be quite challenging. I was looking and I was waiting. I didn't have anywhere else to be. I didn't have a deadline in front of me, so I wasn't really that much in a rush. Yeah? But I was looking and I was waiting. And I finally saw a car about to back out of its space. All of you know parking lot etiquette. Anybody else know parking lot etiquette? You kind of pull up behind them and you turn your indicator on and you wait patiently to take the space that they're about to leave, right? That's parking lot etiquette. And as I sat there, another car came from the opposite direction, and they paused and they hovered, and then they put their indicator on as if they were going to take the same space. Sort of a parking lot standoff, if you will. And I sort of pointed at the space and I said, I'm going to park here, to the lady, you know, and as if she could hear what I was actually saying. And then she pointed to the space. Oh, you mean this space over here? As if, she, you know, I wasn't really going to pay attention at all. And before I knew it, she was trying to park in my space. She was heading that way, and I got so angry, I just lost it. I mean, everybody knows parking etiquette, right? You'd hope so. And the first person that gets there normally is the person that gets the space. So I did what any good pastor would do. I sped up and I got there before she did, and I just silently voodoo cursed her as I drove in. I'm joking about the last bit, by the way. And I was looking back at that, and I just felt so convicted about my response. It wasn't just that I got frustrated or impatient or even angry. It was the fact that I wasn't in a hurry, guys. But hurry was inside me. Right? I wasn't in some kind of rush to get anywhere, to do anything, or save anybody, or solve anything. But there was this sense of hurry deep down on the inside of me that just came out. A researcher from the London School of Business and Finance says more and more people suffer today from what he calls hurry sickness. It's a compulsive need to do more and go faster, even when there's no objective reason to be in such a rush. Have you ever been in a rush where you've really had no actual reason to be rushing around? Hey? There are some clear signs of hurry sickness at work in our lives if we pay attention. And I want to walk through some of these with you just real quickly just now. Number one, you know that you've got worry sickness if there's a nagging sense that there's not enough time. If you have hurry sickness, you'll have this nagging sense day after day, there's just not enough time. In the 1960s, a group of futurists, right, they managed to get a meeting with the U.S. Congress, right, and they said to the U.S. Congress that by 1985, listen to this, due to advances in technology and efficiency, people will work 22 hours a day for 27 weeks of the year, and the rest of the year they would just have off. Right? That's what they said. This is real. They predicted this is a real thing. The biggest problem in our society is that people will have too much spare time. Did that come true? I don't think so. we feel just the opposite. And we're way ahead of 1985. We feel the opposite. The one thing we feel that we never have enough time. Right? We never have enough time. So we try to do more and we go faster and we do more at the same time. We're multitasking. Ask yourself, how long can you go without checking your phone or your watch, if it's a smart watch? How long can you go without looking at your emails? Some of us are pretty addicted to these things called mobile phones, and we're constantly checking it. How much time does it take to get restless or impatient when you're waiting in a queue at the store? A minute? Less than that? There's an article based on a real study about how people using a microwave, listen to this, look for something else to do if the food is going to take longer than 30 seconds, right, to heat up. They start to try to find something else to do. How often do you have to tell your kids to hurry up just because you feel like time is running out? Here's the thing about hurry. Hurry isn't actually saving you time. You're not accruing seconds to spend later on in the day. Hurry just reinforces that feeling that you're running out of time, but there's never enough time. Number 2, a lack of meaning or depth or joy in your life. As you try to do more and more and more, less of it feels meaningful. Less of it feels significant. It's kind of that blur of activity I mentioned earlier, where you hardly remember what you did yesterday or last week. It was just a lot of stuff that you did. There's a lack of meaning in life if we look at last week of our lives and we're not even sure what we were doing. Yeah? An economist named Jeremy Rifkin put it this way in a book called Time Wars, right? This is what he says. He says, despite our alleged efficiency, you can go to that quote, Benji. Despite our alleged efficiency, we seem to have less time for ourselves and far less time for each other. We have quickened the pace of life only to become less patient. We have become more organized, but less spontaneous, less joyful. We are better prepared to act on the future, but less able to enjoy the present and reflect on the past. Isn't that true, guys? He goes on to say, today we have surrounded ourselves with time-saving technology only to be overwhelmed by plans that cannot be carried out, appointments that cannot be honored, schedules that cannot be fulfilled, and deadlines that cannot be met. This is why hurried people never look very happy. Have you ever seen somebody tailgating in traffic with a big smile on their face, just enjoying life? Of course not. You cannot really hurry and smile. You cannot really hurry and experience peace and joy. There's a lack of meaning in it. Number 3, a lack of compassion. People who are in a hurry simply don't have time to help. Years ago, there was an actual study, an experiment involving students, listen to this, at Princeton Theological Seminary. These guys training, men and women training to be pastors or in ministry at some point. These students were brought together and they were asked to prepare a short sermon on the parable of the Good Samaritan. Many of you will know the story of the Good Samaritan. And then they had to prepare the sermon, and then they had to walk to a different building to actually present that message. So you prepare the sermon in this building, and then you walk to this other building, and that's where you present it, right? And along the way to the other building, each student was set up. It was staged. They didn't know it at the time, but they were completely set up to encounter a person who was slumped over, groaning, and in clear distress. Does anybody know where this is going? Would a seminary student who was studying to be a pastor and serve in a church, who was about to give a sermon on the Good Samaritan, stop and help a person in need? Here's the catch. There were different groups of students. One group of students were told that they were late, that they were out of time, that they hardly even had time to prepare. And another group of students were told that they had plenty of time. Do you want to know what happened? Most of the students surprisingly actually didn't stop when they encountered this person who was moaning and groaning and in distress. They didn't stop. But the real shocking factor was only 1 out of 10 students who was in a hurry stopped to help. 1 out of 10 students walking to give a sermon on helping a person in need actually stopped to help a person in need. Why? It's not because they were cold-hearted or cruel. It was very, very simple. They were in a hurry. They were just in a hurry. It sounds crazy, but are we really that different to those students? You know, am I really that different? I thought about it this week. How often do I rush by someone in need? My wife, a friend, a colleague, someone in crisis. How often do you? Because you feel like you just have to keep going. And when we're in a hurry, we don't have time to help. Number 4, a lack of grace. When hurry is in you, you're going to feel more and more deprived of grace. We live hurried lives, and when we do so, we're not storing up extra time. We're actually storing up things like impatience and frustration and stress and anger. Studies actually show being in a hurry is not just a stress reaction, it's a stress trigger. The brain actually releases adrenaline into your body when you're in a hurry, and you feel more stressed or concerned, or that life is somehow in danger even, which is why when we're in a hurry, we often get angry or impatient with others or ourselves. We stop experiencing grace and we lack grace. It's why when we're in a hurry, so many bad things seem to come out of us, because we lack grace. But here's the thing. Jesus had a very specific response to hurry. There's a lot of places in life where we have to do a little guessing, like what would Jesus say regarding this and what would he have meant. Jesus had a very specific response to this challenge right here. This is from the book of Luke, and now we get to our Bibles, so you can turn to the book of Luke if you have one. This is from the book of Luke. It's actually a story, and many of you will know this. This is Luke chapter 10, verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Just so you know, in that day, hospitality was the supreme cultural value. To not show great hospitality would dishonor yourself and dishonor your guests. So you can imagine, Martha is feeling some stress around her home at the moment. And then it goes on to say there that she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself?" Have you ever said something like this before? Tell her to help me. Tell her to help me is the next one. And then he says, "Martha, Martha. Martha, Martha." Can you hear him slowing her down there? "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her." Let's just reflect on the story for a moment. Let's reflect and see what we can learn from it. First of all, can you hear the hurry in Martha's voice? Could you hear the rush, the anxiety of all the preparations, all the stress, all she has to do, all the pressures? Like, what if it doesn't go right? What if it's not perfect? Or what if our guests aren't feeling honored? Have you ever been in a moment where you just felt all the stress, all the burden, all the pressure on you? And then hurry wells up in her, and she begins to make assumptions about the world, assumptions about reality, and we need to look at that and we need to question. First, she assumes Jesus doesn't care about her struggle. Lord, don't you care? Lord, don't you care? Don't you notice all that I have to do? Aren't you going to do something about it? Isn't that how we feel when we're rushed? Like we're the only person who's struggling and no one else really cares about this? Martha also assumes that she's alone, doesn't she? My sister has left me to do all the work by myself. Have you ever thought that? Have you ever said that to a spouse or a significant other or a colleague or a roommate? We're all alone in our hurry, guys. And when we feel alone, we start to hurry more. But here's the thing, it's what we have to see. This is what we have to see in the story. Martha was not alone. Who was right there with her in the room? This is not meant to be a trick question, right? This is church, okay? Jesus was right there in the room with her. In her home, wherever that is, whatever street she was on, the God of the universe in the living room just hanging out. Do you get that? You see, when hurry gets in us, we start to miss the one thing that matters, that God is with us. In that moment, God is with us. He is not stressed. He's not anxious. He's not demanding. He's not asking us to hurry and to go faster and to move quicker. God is with us. Instead, we start to see only what can go wrong. Only what is not getting done. Only what isn't perfect. Or only what could hurt our reputation. Only what we feel guilty about. Am I getting in your life yet? Yeah? This is why the main thing we need to do this summer is not do more, faster, and better. The main thing we need to do is to ruthlessly eliminate and to intentionally eliminate hurry from our lives. What else? There's nothing else. How do we do this? The first thing is we cannot do this alone. You cannot just try harder to go slower or be more patient. Jesus put it this way, and many of you will know these words that he said. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He doesn't say, "I will give you burdens or tasks to do, a to-do list or more pressure." I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus is saying quite directly, don't try this alone. Come to me, take my yoke upon you. A yoke, if you didn't know, is a harness that two oxen would be harnessed in together so that they could plow the field in step. And it only worked if they moved at the same speed. Do you see where Jesus is going with this? Jesus is not saying, I just want you to spend some time with me on the weekends at church or when you're in Connect group or whatever. Jesus is saying, you actually have to do life in my rhythm, at my pace. No slower, no faster, just my yoke upon you. Here's the thing. Jesus never hurried. You ever look through all the Gospels, stories to see whether he did? Jesus actually never hurried. It's remarkable. He was busy. There were demands on his time. There was emotional urgency very often. There was pressure. There were times that were incredibly stressful. There was plenty to do. It wasn't like there was nothing to do in the first century. There were demands, but he never hurried. He didn't have to hurry. If you look at his life, he intentionally set up a rhythm of life to resist the temptation to hurry. He would get up early to spend time alone in prayer. He would sometimes wait when others felt the need to rush. He had the courage to say no, even to urgent requests. That's Jesus' yoke. That's his rhythm of life. And we have to learn to walk in step with him and with that. Guys, I know that this sounds like this isn't that spiritual, or it's not really that important. And I want to close with just a few practical suggestions for you. Just some things that you can actually do and implement in your life, whether or not you're a person who feels like you have incredible faith, or you may not feel like you have much faith at all. These are very practical, very simple things any person can try. Firstly, set a time each day to practice slowing. One of the best ways to combat a habit of speeding up is to introduce a habit of slowing down. I've been experimenting with this a little bit in my own life. I have a set of a 10-minute time most days when I'll just stop whatever I'm doing. I'll just stop. My email is closed. My phone is off. My Twitter is not tweeting. I'll just sit in silence and I'll slow down my breathing and I'll just do nothing. Very often I do that in my car waiting for the kids. Right? And the point is not to have some spiritual epiphany. The point is simply to allow my body to experience the unhurried time. Your body needs to experience unhurried time. It's in those moments I begin to realize and become aware of things I forget or lose sight of when I'm in a hurry. Things like God really cares about my life. I'm actually not alone in whatever I'm facing. God is going to continue to walk with me wherever I go, whatever I face. The very same thoughts I know you forget when you're rushing around in your life are the thoughts that can come into your soul through unhurried time. There are a lot of ways you can practice, a lot of different ways you can do this in your own life. You don't have to do it that way that I'm doing it. The one rule is, though, that you cannot do something else at the same time. Multitasking is cheating when it comes to slowing down, okay? The point is just to stop and slow down, okay? Secondly, take advantage of opportunities to wait. This is an important one, guys. Just a moment of confession. Does anybody else hate waiting? No. Right? It's okay. A few of you are honest, at least. That's good. God is training all of us in moments we wait to be more patient. We have an opportunity wherever we wait to have a moment with God. A moment with God, guys, that we wouldn't otherwise have. When we encounter a slowdown in traffic or a queue at the shops, you're standing there at the LD queue that can be incredibly long and you're waiting there at the store, use it as a time to pray, guys. Use it as a time to rest your mind or just not be busy for a moment. I love how the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah put it in the book of Lamentations. He said this, "The Lord is good to those who wait for Him." Think about that. The Lord is good to those who wait, as in God has a good thing in store for you when you practice this. When you take advantage of the opportunities to wait, God has something good for you. Does anybody else need something good from God today? Or is it just me? I do. And God has good things for you and for us when we pause and wait and listen and reflect. Thirdly, schedule time alone. Do you know what one of the most anxious moments for people in our world today is? Do you know what brings up the most anxiety in a person? It's the anxiety we feel when we have nothing to do. And that's a problem, guys. That's a problem. So we have to confront this intentionally by actually scheduling time to be alone. Scheduling unscheduled time. I know this is complicated with family and work, and you might have to take turns with your spouse if you have kids, or schedule it into your work day. I think every follower of Christ should spend at least one day a year in solitude. I think it's healthy. Just a scheduled day for a time alone. Not just because we need a break to rest, but because it's in those moments that we actually discover what's really going on inside our souls. I do this often. My kind wife allows me to run away to the woods where I spend at least a day, where I'm just alone. Some of you have no idea at all what is churning deep down in you. You've been moving so fast, you have been avoiding so much, you've been just unwilling to even uncover the pain or the hurt or the fear or the doubt. That is not what God wants for you. God is not asking you to just keep moving and just get by. He wants you to experience joy and peace and life, and we need time alone just to allow that to come to the surface. So, schedule time alone. Number 4, and we're nearly there. We're going to bring this to a close soon. 4, learn to say no. Some of you, I'm sure, already are experts at this, okay? But this is, as it turns out, can be a real challenge for us yes people, and I'm a yes person, okay, if you didn't discover that. We have to learn that it's okay to say no. In fact, we should just practice doing that just for a moment right here, right now. Turn to the person next to you and just say to them no. Go on, try that. Say no to them. Hello. Doesn't that feel good? Hey, some of you, it feels so good you don't want to stop now, all right? Sometimes we just need to learn to say no, okay? We cannot always say no. We cannot have a culture of no, but there is always something. This week, there will be something you can say no to that will help you live an unhurried life. Lastly, fifthly, take a weekly Sabbath. Take a weekly Sabbath. This may be the most difficult, but I think it may be the most important, okay? Take a weekly Sabbath. For 6 days a week, it's okay to think about productivity and efficiency and getting more stuff done, but then you get a day that's different. God commands us in this. He says life is not 24/7. He says life is 24/6. You get a day that's different, and there's a lot of ways to experiment with the Sabbath in your life. If you need help on this one, Tim and George, you know them. They're good people to talk to about this. To start with, maybe it's a day of not checking your email or responding to work calls. Maybe it's a day you spend with your family. The Sieves by the sea, that's us, we often will go to a restaurant in the morning where kids eat free, okay, so we can afford it, and then we go for a long walk in the woods, or we might do something, but generally it's away from our devices. It's a good thing. So maybe it's a day with your family. Maybe it's a day when you spend alone in solitude and letting God speak into your life. That's a good thing. Maybe it's a day spent reading or in prayer or in scripture. Maybe it's just a day with close friends, focused on your relationships. When last did you do that? And having conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe it's a day just to do something that you love, but you never get time to do. If you love to cook, well, cook. If you love to play golf, play golf. If you love to go bowling, for goodness sake, find a better sport. Okay? Every week, and I'm serious about this, every week you get a day that's different, okay? You get a day that's different. Here's the thing. I know what you're thinking right now. Okay, you can get over that joke now. Okay, come on. I know what you're thinking. John, that sounds great, or maybe that sounds like somebody who's really spiritual or doesn't have many commitments, can do, but I just don't have the time. Well, maybe you're a little overcommitted. And maybe you've taken on more than you should. And maybe you need to say no a few more times. But here's the thing. We always have time for what matters the most. We always have time for what matters the most. Someone said, God doesn't call you to a life you don't have time for. Just think about that. God hasn't called you to a life you don't have time for. And if you don't feel you have enough time, something has to change. This is serious. Something has to change. Your life is too important for something not to change. I read about someone who went through a very, very stressful family situation. His wife got very ill, and his schedule, his work, and his finances just kind of went into chaos all of a sudden. And there was so much to do, there was so much to manage, so much less that he could control, and the temptation was to hurry and to be anxious and to be stressed and to try and to control things. But the only new commitment he added to his life was to get up 30 minutes earlier every day and just be alone with God, just to sit and be alone with God. And I love what he said about it. He said this: life was suddenly too difficult not to do this. Guys, life is too difficult not to do this. Your life is too meaningful not to do this. Your family is too important not to do this. Your challenges are too great not to do this, which means you have a decision you need to make right now. This week, will you intentionally commit to start to eliminate hurry from your life? Will you do it? Will you resist the temptation to just rush when you don't need to? Will you stop and take a moment to just be still and be quiet and remember God is right there even if He feels miles away? Because you see, the slowing won't happen by accident. It won't happen just because you might have a dream about it or want it. You cannot do it without God's grace. But He cannot do it without your intention, your will, and your effort. You must take His yoke upon you. You must walk with Him in step with Him. What's it going to be, guys? Which one of the 5 will you commit to do right now, today, to take this on into this very week, to try to eliminate hurry? Let's pray together.